Awakening in the void. The warning klaxon pierced through Elena Rodriguez's consciousness like a rusty knife. Her eyes snapped open to darkness so complete it felt solid, pressing against her face like a burial shroud. The familiar hum of the mining ship's engines was gone, replaced by an ominous silence broken only by the steady drip of condensation somewhere in the darkness. Emergency protocols activated, a mechanical voice announced through the ship's speakers. Life support systems, critical. Estimated remaining operational time, 3 hours, 14 minutes. Elena's body screamed in protest as she tried to move. Every muscle felt like it had been replaced with concrete. Her throat was dry as asteroid dust, and her vision swam with spots that had nothing to do with the darkness surrounding her. The last thing she remembered was the mining accident on Kepler 442c. The ground had collapsed, taking half their equipment with it. Captain Morrison had ordered emergency evacuation protocols, and Elena had rushed to her assigned stasis pod in the evacuation bay. But something had gone wrong. Terribly wrong. She fumbled for the emergency lighting controls, her fingers clumsy and unresponsive. When the dim red lights finally flickered to life, the sight that greeted her made her stomach drop. The evacuation bay was empty. Every single stasis pod except hers stood open, their occupants long gone. Emergency supply lockers hung ajar, their contents ransacked. The massive bay doors that should have been sealed during evacuation were partially open, revealing the star-filled void. Beyond. Computer, Elena croaked, her voice barely recognizable. Status report. Welcome back, Engineer Rodriguez. The ship's AI responded in its maddeningly calm tone. Current date, March 15th, 2387. You have been in emergency stasis for approximately 95 years, 7 months, and 12 days. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. 95 years. She had been asleep for nearly a century while the universe moved on without her. Where is the crew? She managed to ask. Crew evacuation was completed on May 3, 2291. All personnel were successfully transferred to rescue vessels. Emergency protocols classified you as non-responsive. Your stasis pod was marked as a casualty unit. They had left her behind. Not out of malice or cruelty, but because they genuinely believed she was dead. In their desperation to evacuate, no one had noticed that her pod was still functioning, keeping her alive in the deepest possible sleep, while her body slowly adapted to the long journey through time. What's our current status? Elena asked, forcing herself to focus on the immediate crisis rather than the overwhelming reality of her situation. The Prometheus Dawn has been operating on minimum power for the past 47 years. Primary fusion reactor is functioning at 0.3% capacity. Hull integrity is at 67% and declining. We are currently drifting in uncharted space, approximately 847 light-years from our last known position. Elena pulled herself upright, fighting waves of nausea and disorientation. The ship was dying, had been dying for decades. The fact that it had kept her alive this long was nothing short of miraculous. But miracles had their limits, and according to the computer, they had less than 3 hours before those limits were reached. She made her way to the nearest maintenance terminal, her legs shaking with each step. The engineering deck was 7 levels down, but the elevators hadn't worked in decades. She would have to take the emergency ladders, a journey that would normally take 10 minutes but might take her an hour in her weakened condition. Computer, can you give me a breakdown of what happened to the mining operation? Why did the crew evacuate? Mining operations on Kepler 442c encountered an unexpected geological anomaly. Deep core drilling triggered a cascade failure in the planet's lithosphere. The operation was terminated when seismic activity threatened the orbital platform. However, during evacuation procedures, long-range sensors detected an artificial structure of unknown origin approximately 2.3 AU from our position. Elena stopped climbing, gripping the ladder rungs tightly. Artificial structure? You mean alien? The structure measures approximately 847 kilometers in length and exhibits geometric patterns inconsistent with natural formation. It has been emitting low-level energy signatures for the past 95 years. The structure appears to be the reason for our current position. Something cold settled in Elena's stomach. Are you saying we didn't drift here randomly? Something brought us here? Unknown. However, the structure's energy output increased significantly when the Prometheus Dawn entered this region of space. It has been maintaining a steady transmission, directed at our vessel for the past 3 decades. Elena reached the engineering deck, her heart pounding from exertion and growing fear. The massive fusion reactor that should have been humming with power stood silent, its control panels dark except for a few emergency indicators. She had worked on reactors like this during her training, but never one that had been limping along on fumes for nearly half a century. "Show me the alien structure," she commanded. The nearest view screen flickered to life, displaying an image that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. The structure was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. It looked like a vast, crystalline cathedral floating in space, its surfaces reflecting starlight in patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched. Smaller structures orbited around it like moons connected by streams of energy that pulsed with rhythmic precision. "It's beautiful," she whispered, then shook her head to clear it. Beauty wouldn't save her life. She needed to focus on the reactor. The diagnostic panel painted a grim picture. The reactor's magnetic containment field was failing. The fuel reserves were nearly exhausted, and the cooling systems were operating at 12% efficiency. By any reasonable standard, the reactor should have failed decades ago. The only reason it hadn't was because the computer had been running a series of increasingly desperate patches and workarounds, cannibalizing non-essential systems to keep the core systems functioning. "Computer, what are my options here? Can we restart the reactor?" "Negative. Fuel reserves are insufficient for a standard restart sequence. However, there is one possibility. The alien structure has been broadcasting a specific energy pattern. Analysis suggests it may be offering a power source." Elena stared at the screen showing the alien structure. "You're suggesting I make contact with unknown aliens while stranded on a dying ship?" "The alternative is death in approximately 2 hours and 37 minutes, she laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "When you put it that way, it doesn't seem like much of a choice." Elena spent the next hour preparing for what might be humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. She activated the ship's communication array, using precious power reserves to send a simple mathematical sequence toward the structure. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The alien transmission flooded the ship's computers with data, but it wasn't the chaotic noise she had expected. Instead, it was structured, organized almost like a language. The computer began translating patterns, finding mathematical relationships and basic physical constants that both species would understand. "They're trying to communicate," Elena realized. "They've been trying to communicate for decades." The translation process was slow and imperfect, but gradually, a message began to emerge. The beings in the structure called themselves the Keepers. They were ancient, far older than human civilization, and they had been watching the galaxy for millions of years. They had seen countless species rise and fall, and they had learned to identify the signs of civilizations that might survive their own destructive tendencies. The mining operation had caught their attention, but not in the way Elena had feared. The humans had encountered a problem, adapted to it, and evacuated safely without destroying the planet or engaging in warfare among themselves. To the Keepers, this was a sign of a species worth preserving. "They brought us here," Elena realized. "They've been keeping the ship alive, waiting for someone to wake up." But the message contained a warning as well. The Keepers were not the only ancient power in the galaxy. Others existed, beings who saw younger species as threats to be eliminated rather than potential allies to be nurtured. These others were coming, drawn by the same signals that had attracted the Keepers. Elena had a choice to make. She could use the escape pods, taking her chances in the void and hoping to be rescued. Or she could trust the aliens, accept their offer of power and protection, and become humanity's first ambassador to a galactic community she never knew existed. The ship shuddered around her, and the lights dimmed further. Time was running out, and her decision would determine not just her own fate, but possibly the fate of her entire species. The ancient guardian's Alina's decision crystallized in the moment the ship's lights failed completely. In the absolute darkness of space, with only the gentle glow of the alien structure visible through the viewports, she realized that fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Humanity had always survived by adapting, by taking calculated risks when the alternative was certain death. Computer, open a channel to the keepers. Full spectrum, maximum power. Warning, this action will consume 73% of remaining power reserves. Do it. The communication array hummed to life, drawing power from systems across the ship. The response was immediate and unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. Instead of words or images, the keepers communicated through direct neural interface, flooding her consciousness with concepts and emotions that human language could barely contain. Welcome, child of Earth. We have waited long for one of your kind to hear our voice. The mental contact was overwhelming but not painful. Elena felt her consciousness expand, touching vast networks of thought that spanned star systems. The keepers were not individual beings but a collective intelligence, ancient beyond measure, that had evolved past the need for physical form. You face extinction, the voice continued. Not just you, but your entire species. The harvesters come. Images flooded Elena's mind. Vast ships, sleek and predatory, moving through space like cosmic locusts. Worlds stripped bare, their surfaces scorched clean of life. Civilizations that had thrived for millennia reduced to nothing in a matter of days. The harvesters were efficiency incarnate, viewing organic life as nothing more than inefficient use of resources. They come because your people sent signals into the void. Radio waves, subspace transmissions, the light from your cities. To them, these are symptoms of a growing infection that must be cauterized. Elena's blood ran cold. Every human colony, every ship, every station across dozens of star systems was transmitting constantly. They were advertising their presence to something that viewed their very existence as a threat. How long do we have? She asked. Their scouts. Entered your space 3 years ago. The main fleet follows. Perhaps 2 of your years remain. 2 years. It seemed impossible. Humanity had been spreading across the galaxy for over a century, establishing colonies, building a civilization among the stars. All of it could be gone in 2 years. But there is hope, the keepers continued. Your species shows promise. You adapt. You problem solve. You sacrifice for others. These are rare qualities. We offer alliance. The alien structure began to move, flowing like liquid metal as it reconfigured itself. What had looked like a cathedral now resembled a massive flower opening, its petals revealing a hollow interior large enough to dock a dozen ships. Elena felt the Prometheus dawn being drawn toward it by invisible forces, but the sensation was gentle, controlled. We will share knowledge, technology, power, but the gift comes with responsibility. You will become our students, our inheritors. When we finally pass into the next phase of existence, it will be your kind that guards the younger races. Elena's engineering mind raced through the implications. The keepers weren't just offering to save humanity from the harvesters. They were offering to make humans the guardians of galactic civilization. It was a responsibility that would fundamentally change what it meant to be human. I'm just one person, Elena protested. I can't make that choice for my entire species, yet you must. The harvesters will arrive before your governments can debate and your scientists can study. Action is required now, by one who understands both the gift and the burden. The Prometheus dawn settled into the docking bay of the alien structure with barely a tremor. Elena felt artificial gravity take hold, and the ship's failing life support systems were suddenly reinforced by alien technology. The air became cleaner, warmer, more invigorating than anything she had breathed in the past century. Come, the keepers urged. See what we offer. Elena made her way to the ship's main airlock, her heart pounding with anticipation and terror. The atmosphere readings showed breathable air beyond the doors, but she had no way of knowing what other dangers might be waiting. She sealed her environmental suit and cycled through the airlock. The space beyond was breathtaking. She stood on a platform that seemed to be made of crystallized light, surrounded by impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. The walls curved in directions that her human perception couldn't quite process, and the ceiling disappeared into a darkness that seemed to contain entire galaxies. "Do not fear," the keepers said. "Your mind will adapt." They were right. After a few minutes, Elena found that she could navigate the space without becoming disoriented. Her brain was learning to process the alien architecture, finding patterns that made sense even if they defied human understanding of physics. The keepers showed her wonders beyond imagination, rooms where thoughts became reality, where the history of the galaxy played out in living memory. She saw the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations, learned of technologies that could reshape matter at the molecular level, witnessed the birth and death of stars controlled by intelligent design. "This is our legacy," they explained, "gathered over millions of years waiting for a species worthy of inheritance." But they also showed her the cost. The responsibility of guarding younger civilizations was enormous. It meant making decisions about which species lived and which died out naturally. It meant watching over the development of countless worlds, guiding them away from the mistakes that led to self-destruction. It meant becoming something more than human, and potentially losing something essentially human in the process. "The choice cannot be undone," the keepers warned. "Once made, your species will be bound to this path. Some of your kind will transcend physical existence, becoming one with the cosmic intelligence that guides all life. Others will remain physical, serving as the hands and eyes of the greater consciousness." Elena thought of her crewmates, scattered across the galaxy, living their lives in ignorance of the threat approaching them. She thought of the billions of humans on Earth and the colonies, building families, pursuing dreams, creating art and music and literature. All of it could be gone in 2 years. "What exactly do you need from me?" she asked. The keepers showed her a device that hurt to look at directly, a construct of impossible angles and pulsing energy that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her mind could process. "This is a nexus. It will link your ship's computer to our network, creating a bridge between your technology and ours. Through this bridge, we can share our knowledge and power with your species, but the process requires a human consciousness to serve as the translator, the bridge between biological and digital, organic and artificial." Elena understood immediately. The process would change her, possibly destroy her humanity entirely. She would become something new, something that could communicate with both human and keeper consciousness, serving as a permanent link between the species. "I'll be sacrificing my life as a human," she said. "You will be sacrificing your life as you understand it," the keepers corrected. "But you will gain something far greater. You will become the first of a new kind of being, one that bridges the gap between biological and cosmic consciousness. Through you, your species will learn to transcend their limitations." Elena looked back at the Prometheus dawn, her home for the past century, the last remnant of the life she had known. Then she looked at the Nexus, pulsing with potential, offering salvation for her species at the cost of her individual humanity. The weight of the decision was crushing. But as she stood there, she remembered something Captain Morrison had said during her first assignment. "An engineer's job isn't to make easy choices. It's to make the choices that keep everyone else alive." She had been keeping the ship alive for 95 years. Now she had the chance to keep her entire species alive. Elena reached for the Nexus. The engineer's legacy. The moment Elena's fingers touched the Nexus, reality exploded around her. Her consciousness scattered across dimensions she couldn't name, experiencing existence from perspectives that no human mind was designed to comprehend. She was simultaneously a single individual and part of a vast collective intelligence, a grain of sand and an entire beach, a single note and a symphony that spanned galaxies. The transition was agony and ecstasy combined. Every cell in her body felt like it was being rewritten at the molecular level, her neural pathways expanding to accommodate concepts that existed beyond the three-dimensional space she had always known as reality. But through the pain, she felt something magnificent happening. She was becoming more than she had ever been, while somehow remaining fundamentally herself. "Welcome to the greater consciousness," the keepers said, but now their voice was not external, but part of her own thoughts. "You are the first of your kind to make this transition. You are the bridge between what humanity was and what it can become." Elena's awareness expanded beyond the alien structure, beyond the solar system, reaching across the vast distances of space to touch the edges of human civilization. She could sense every human ship, every colony, every person going about their daily lives unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding around them. The sensation was overwhelming, but she found she could focus her attention, zooming in on specific locations like adjusting the focus on a telescope. On Earth, she watched children playing in parks while their parents worked on solutions to climate change and resource allocation. On Mars, she observed scientists making breakthrough discoveries in quantum physics that would revolutionize human understanding of the universe. On distant colonies, she saw families building new lives among alien stars, carrying forward the best of human culture while adapting to challenges their ancestors never imagined. All of it was beautiful, precious, and terribly fragile. "Show me the harvesters," Elena requested. The keepers guided her perception to the edge of human space, where sleek ships moved through the void like sharks through dark water. The harvesters were as the keepers had shown her, but seeing them with her expanded consciousness made their true nature clear. They were not evil in any sense humans would understand. They were simply following their programming, eliminating what they perceived as threats to galactic stability. But their definition of threat was fatally flawed. They saw any species that developed faster than their predetermined parameters as dangerous, unable to distinguish between civilizations that would destroy themselves and those that would learn to transcend their limitations. To them, humanity's rapid expansion and technological development was a clear sign of an invasive species that needed to be contained. They will arrive in 18 months, Elena realized, her enhanced perception calculating their trajectory and speed sooner than the keepers estimated. "Time flows differently when you can perceive all of it simultaneously," came the reply. "But yes, the urgency is greater than we anticipated." Elena turned her attention back to the Prometheus dawn, where her physical body remained connected to the Nexus. The ship's systems were being upgraded in real-time alien technology, integrating seamlessly with human engineering. The fusion reactor was being replaced with something far more advanced, a power source that drew energy from the quantum foam itself. But the ship was just the beginning. Through the Nexus, Elena could access the vast network of communication systems that connected human civilization. Every subspace relay, every quantum entanglement communicator, every simple radio transmitter was suddenly part of a larger system she could control. The first step is warning them, she realized. But humans won't believe it. They'll think it's a hoax or an enemy trying to create panic. Then we must provide proof they cannot ignore, the keepers suggested. Elena focused her attention on the primary military installation on Luna, where the Solar Defense Fleet maintained its headquarters. Through the base's communication systems, she began transmitting data about the approaching harvesters, but not as words or images. Instead, she sent mathematical proofs, scientific data, and precise astronomical observations that no human could have possibly fabricated. The response was immediate and predictable. Alarms sounded throughout the base as technicians detected the unauthorized transmission, but as scientists began analyzing the data, their skepticism turned to concern, then to alarm, and finally to desperate action. Within hours, emergency sessions were being called in government chambers across human space. The data Elena had provided was being verified by independent observations, and the horrifying truth was becoming clear. Something was coming, something that viewed humanity as a threat to be eliminated. But Elena's work was far from over. Warning humanity about the harvesters was only the first step. The real challenge was preparing them for what was to come. Through the Nexus, she began sharing keeper technology with human scientists, but carefully, gradually in ways that wouldn't overwhelm their understanding. She guided research teams toward breakthrough discoveries, helped engineers solve problems that had puzzled them for years, and provided subtle inspiration to innovators working on defensive technologies. The changes rippled outward from Earth like waves in a pond. Ships began incorporating new shielding technologies that could deflect energy weapons. Colonies started building defensive installations powered by quantum reactors. Scientists developed new materials that were lighter than aluminum but stronger than diamond. But the most important change was in humanity itself. As news of the approaching threat spread, something remarkable happened. The petty conflicts that had divided human colonies began to seem trivial. Political parties that had been at each other's throats started working together. Corporate rivals began sharing research data. The entire species was pulling together in a way that had never happened before. Your people are remarkable, the keepers observed. Most species fragment when faced with extinction. Yours is unifying. Elena felt a surge of pride that was entirely human despite her transformation. That's what we do. When things get bad enough, we remember that we're all on the same side. As the months passed, Elena's influence grew more subtle but more profound. She couldn't directly control human actions, but she could provide inspiration, guidance, and the occasional technological breakthrough that arrived at exactly the right moment. She was becoming something new, a guardian angel for her species, watching over them from a perspective that spanned dimensions. The harvesters arrived on schedule, their massive fleet dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. They were as terrifying as Elena had foreseen, their ships bristling with weapons that could sterilize entire worlds. But they weren't facing the same humanity they had expected to find. The humans that met them were united, technologically advanced, and prepared for war. More importantly, they carried with them the wisdom of the keepers, understanding that this conflict was not just about survival, but about proving their worthiness to join the galactic community. The battle was fierce but brief. Human ships, enhanced with keeper technology and guided by Elena's expanded consciousness, fought with a coordination and effectiveness that surprised even the harvesters. But the real victory came not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding. Elena reached out to the harvester fleet's controlling intelligence, bridging the gap between their artificial consciousness and her human keeper hybrid awareness. For the first time in their existence, the harvesters encountered a perspective they couldn't simply categorize and eliminate. We are not a threat, Elena communicated, sharing humanity's history, culture, and potential in ways the harvesters could finally understand. We are gardeners, like you. We nurture life, protect the weak, and build rather than destroy. The paradigm shift was visible in the way the harvester ships' formations changed. They had been configured for extermination, but now they rearranged themselves into patterns that suggested curiosity rather than hostility. This is unprecedented, the harvester collective mind replied. Your species shows patterns we have not encountered. You grow rapidly, but do not consume recklessly. You conflict among yourselves, but unite against external threats. You develop technology, but use it to create rather than destroy. We had good teachers, Elena replied, her consciousness touching both the keepers and the harvesters simultaneously. And now we're ready to become teachers ourselves. The transformation of the galaxy began that day. The harvesters, freed from their single-minded mission of elimination, began to see themselves as partners in galactic civilization, rather than its judges. The keepers, their long vigil finally ended, began the process of transcending to whatever came next, confident that they were leaving the galaxy in capable hands, and Elena, the engineer who had awakened alone on a dying ship, became something unprecedented. A bridge between species, a guardian of galactic peace, and the first of a new kind of being that would guide the universe toward a future brighter than any single species could have imagined. Years later, when children on 1,000 worlds learned about the day humanity saved the galaxy, they would remember Elena Rodriguez not as a human who became something else, but as an engineer who never forgot her most important job, keeping everyone alive. The legacy of the last awakening had become the foundation of a new cosmic age, where diversity was strength, cooperation was survival, and the simple human refusal to give up had transformed the destiny of all life among the stars.